Hello, and welcome to the latest edition of Cutting Through. I'm Mitchell Plitnick, the president of Rethinking Foreign Policy and the author of the Cutting Through newsletter on Substack. You can subscribe to Cutting Through at mitchellplitnick.substack.com, where you can also donate to support this work. It only continues if you support us, and we really do need your help. So if you find this valuable, please donate if you can. Please like and share Cutting Through with your friends and contacts. That also helps sustain this work. So this is a video that I record with a heavy heart, as a major upheaval in the Middle East has now begun with Israel's unprovoked attack on Iran. And that point needs to be emphasized, that this attack was wholly and completely unprovoked, completely illegal, and based on a basically an imagined threat. I explained this in a lot more depth in a piece that I published today, Friday, at Mondo Weiss. It's headlined "How Israel and the U.S. Manufactured a Fake Crisis with Iran That Could Lead to All-Out War." And you can find that at mondoweiss.net. In that article, I explained how the entire issue of the Iran nuclear program is smoke and mirrors, essentially. It is not the threat that it has been made out to be, which is not to say that there aren't certain issues at stake here. But the bottom line that we can go back to is that the United States' own intelligence assessment, which is not contradicted by anyone, has been since 2007 that Iran is not pursuing a nuclear weapon, has not pursued one since 2003. And, as I explained in that article, in 2003, if you go back in time and consider that Iran was looking across the Gulf at Iraq, which had just been invaded by the United States for no reason, under the alleged excuse of Saddam Hussein having weapons of mass destruction, which he did not have at that point, and also the implied excuse of Iraq somehow having been involved in 9/11, which it was not. So when you strip all that away, there was no good reason other than American aggression to invade Iraq. And given the enmity that Israel has long felt since the Iranian Revolution in 1979 with Iran, two nuclear powers staring it down, it is quite possible, although it's not proven, that in 2002, 2003, Iran was exploring its options about and maybe taking this first steps towards trying to acquire a nuclear weapon. I don't think that was the case. I think they were trying to get to breakout capability as a deterrent against the U.S. and Israel. But be that as it may, that's a long time ago. It's more than 2 decades ago, and the United States itself has repeatedly confirmed that there has been no decision by Iran and no intention by Iran since that time to actually pursue a nuclear weapon. That's what the intelligence says. What our political leaders say in public is a completely different thing, which is how this becomes the issue that may be leading us to the brink of a regional or, hopefully not, but potentially even a global war. So check that article out. The details are all in there. Again, mondoweiss.net. And I go into it in a fair amount of detail. So I think you can agree or disagree, but you'll get the argument once you read that article. The question now is what happens now, because the war seems to have started. At this recording, it's Friday afternoon. The latest news that I've heard is that the second volley of missiles from Iran launched at Israel in retaliation for Israel's unprovoked attack seem to have this time hit Tel Aviv and maybe some other places in Israel. Initial report that I saw was at least 7 people were injured, but Those were very, very initial reports. By the time you're watching this, the reporting on this might have changed dramatically. But clearly, this is not something that's going to stop anytime soon. Israel has said that it's going to continue striking Iran until the job is done, but we don't know exactly what that means. It is very unlikely that they can, through just an air war, completely destroy Iran's nuclear facilities. And if their goal is to basically make it impossible for Iran to build a bomb, that's just a forever war, because anything that Israel destroys, Iran can rebuild in time. And as long as they have the knowledge of how to, as long as they have nuclear energy expertise, and you can't bomb that away. So the only way you can maintain that goal is by constant, permanent, endless warfare. That may be what Israel is planning to do, but but that down that path, we must hope that someone can prevent them from going. So what's been the response here in the United States? Well, unfortunately, as usual, the Democrats, who never miss an opportunity have missed yet another one. Here we have Donald Trump, who seemed to want to find a diplomatic resolution to this issue. It seemed like he wanted to be able to claim a victory that he would have claimed, whether it was true or not, doesn't really matter, of course, but that he would have claimed was a better deal with Iran than the one Barack Obama brokered in 2015. It seemed like that was where he wanted to go. It seemed like he really wanted diplomacy to work. And then in recent weeks, he seemed then to sort of cave into the hawkish, potentially neoconservative side of his administration that is insisting on this ridiculous concept of zero enrichment in Iran. Now, I've written about this. I've spoken about this many times. This concept of zero enrichment is a farce. It is a ridiculous conclusion. It is a poison pill that's been thrown in there by people who don't want a diplomatic resolution, who want a war against Iran that will oust the Islamic regime that took over in 1979. That is what that sector is aiming for, and why the zero enrichment condition is there. Iran has already made it clear that they are willing to permit, in exchange for sanctions relief, not just in and of itself, in exchange for sanctions relief, they are willing to permit significantly intrusive access by the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, much as they did in the 2015 deal. The access that the IAEA had in Iran was unprecedented and far more intrusive than what other countries have dealt with. Iran understands, they understand that may be unfair, but they also understand what is, and they need the sanctions relieved. So they have said that they're willing to do that. What they're not willing to do is completely give up enrichment, which there's no reason that they should do. They frame it as a right under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is, the Non-Proliferation Treaty doesn't explicitly say that, but it does explicitly say that countries who are party to the treaty have the right to produce nuclear energy for civilian use, and to do the research, to do the work, to construct the means. And, that implicitly that includes doing their own enrichment. Iran calls that a right. Other people say, well, it's not an explicit right because it's not specifically spelled out, whatever. It doesn't really matter, because if they are granting the IAEA that kind of access, they won't be able to enrich to weapons grade anyway. That sort of enrichment is detectable. It is, and it's detectable. You don't have to be standing right there, where the pieces of uranium are. It's detectable from a distance. So this is not. This is the frame for a deal, if people really want one, is there. And Iran seems to really want one. It's the United States, and especially Israel, that does not. So this poison pill was put in there to make sure that there would be no deal. And it seems like that's where Trump has finally turned. Well, given that Trump has gone back on his promise to be the peace president, which of course no one really ever believed, but still, um, uh, there's a significant part of his base that strongly wants that does not certainly doesn't want to see the United States involved in a war, which we already are, whether Trump wants to admit it or not, but we could get in. We are very likely to get much more deeper into as time goes on and as the fighting goes on. Democrats had an opportunity here to say, okay, well, we're the ones who want to advocate for diplomacy. Instead, well, some of the more notable ones. Let's start with Chuck Schumer, decided to attack Trump from the right. Here's Schumer's statement. The United States' commitment to Israel's security and defense must be ironclad as they prepare for Iran's response. The Iranian regime's stated policy has long been to destroy Israel and Jewish communities around the world. This is not true. I have long said that Israel has a right to defend itself and that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Ensuring they never retain one must remain a top national security priority. You know, it's interesting. The Iranian president, and I note this in my article, actually tweeted that saying that Donald Trump says Iran cannot, must not have a nuclear weapon. And he said, we agree. So let's make that the basis of an agreement. That was how the Iranian president framed it. The fact of the matter is that if Iran does at some point make the political decision to pursue a nuclear weapon, it will be precisely because the United States and Israel keep attacking it. First politically, then with sanctions, and now with bombs and missiles. And with those two nuclear powers attacking it, a nuclear deterrent seems a lot more desirable. No one attacks North Korea for a reason. So if it's really your number one priority to make sure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon, then diplomacy is the avenue. We've seen it work. We saw it work from the time the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal that Obama worked out, from the time the JCPOA was agreed to until Trump tore it up for no reason other than it was Obama's achievement. We saw it work. Trump's own people agreed that it worked. Jim Mattis, Trump's Secretary of Defense, testified at Congress that Iran was complying. The fact is, we also talked about not only sanction relief, but encouraging investment in Iran, which is something we never did. So if you want to talk about non-compliance and not holding up your end of the bargain, even before Trump, that was even true under Obama. So even before Trump tore it up, we still weren't holding up our end. And yet Iran stuck with the JCPOA. They tried to stick with it. They stuck with it for months after Trump abrogated it. But at a certain point, Iran decided the only thing they had, the only lever they had to try and pressure the United States to get back to the negotiating table was to enrich and stockpile more uranium that is enriched to 60%, which isn't quite weapons grade, but it's like just one step below. Not to be outdone, the lunatic senator from Pennsylvania, who will be unsatisfied until every brown person on the planet is dead. John Fetterman said, and I quote, "Our commitment to Israel must be absolute, and I fully support this attack. Keep wiping out Iranian leadership and the nuclear personnel." I want you to be clear here. The nuclear personnel are civilians. These are targeted attacks on civilians. That is called murder. Okay, under any law, national, state, international law, targeting and killing civilians is murder. First degree premeditated murder. It is as illegal as you can get, and this is a U.S. senator advocating it. So let's be very clear about that. Political leaders as well. That is also targeted assassinations of that kind are also illegal. But certainly when you're talking about people who are civilians and you're killing them simply because they're nuclear scientists, because they're doing their jobs. Um, I, I, the idea that a U.S. senator can just say that and nobody even blinks kind of tells us a lot about where we are. Fetterman continues, we must provide whatever is necessary, military intelligence weaponry, to fully back Israel in striking Iran. As a matter of fact, when there was a post that announced that the head of Iran's Revolutionary Guards, Hossein Salam, actually Salami, I believe, had been killed, Fetterman wrote, "Thank you. Next." I mean, this sort of casual, cavalier attitude to killing people, even at the enemy, in at the Seder on Pesach, Passover, um, we have a point at which we talk about the 10 plagues that God supposedly leveled at Egypt, and we spill wine for each of the 10 plagues, and then a few more drops after that, to symbolize that we do not rejoice in the deaths of even our enemies. I mean, and I think that's kind of a beautiful concept. But the idea that we rejoice in any death, if we have to, even the worst person in the world, in my view, if we have to kill, we may have to. You know, this is this is part of life. It can happen. I think even in the most egalitarian society, you may find yourself faced with such a situation someday. If you have to do it, you do it. You're not happy about it. You shouldn't be. If you're any kind of decent person, which, of course, I'm talking about John Fetterman. So, we're clearly not talking about any sort of decent person at all. But, the idea that nobody seems to care that he says these things. I mean, other than activists, the media, I'm suggesting the media, his colleagues just seem to, yeah, okay, he said that. Some would even cheer him on and agree. It says a lot about who we are, I think, as people. Jackie Rosen of Nevada said, the Iranian regime and its proxies have been very public about their commitment to the destruction of Israel and Jewish communities around the world. So we see where Schumer stole his line from, but beyond that, this is just not true. Okay. It is certainly true that Iran has and Iran's leaders have made statements about seeing what they refer to as the Zionist regime disappear, that it turns the page of history, and that it, and they see it certainly as an evil regime. I think very much in the way we in the West, I don't want to say we, but many of us in the West, unfortunately, see the Iranian regime as well. This sort of lack of nuanced thinking is not good for anyone. It's not good under any circumstances, but it is also part of the human condition we all live with. But they have not talked about the destruction of Jewish communities. As a matter of fact, Iran remains home to the biggest Jewish community in that part of the world, including both Iran and the Arab world, as in the Middle East region, anywhere really, outside Europe, the United States, and Israel, and Australia, Canada. It still has a significant Jewish community, which you don't see a lot in the Muslim world for a variety of reasons, which one day I probably should do a video on that as well. But it simply isn't true that they've been on a mission to destroy Jewish communities. Have they targeted Jewish sites sometimes over the years? We know, that at times they have. At times they have had leaders who are, very clearly, Holocaust deniers, like Ahmadinejad. But in terms of policy, they have certainly opposed Israel's existence as an ethnocentric Jewish state. Um, they have opposed Israel's treatment and dispossession of the Palestinians, and one can think of this what they want. Okay, but Iran has still never attacked Israel, which Israel cannot say about Iran. Iran never has attacked anyone. This has not been their policy, and they certainly have not been attacking Jewish communities around the world. It just isn't so. Then I think Rosen says an important thing. Israel acted in self-defense against an attack from Iran, and the U.S. must continue to stand with Israel as it has for decades at this dangerous moment. Let us be very, very clear here. Iran has not attacked Israel. It hasn't. It has retaliated, but it has never attacked Israel. It has never. It has only retaliated when Israel has done things, attacked Iran in ways that it could not ignore. Sometimes they have ignored things that Israel have done that could be considered acts of war. Other times they have responded in very measured ways. But they have certainly, and the idea that this is self-defense is a dangerous concept. This was, in Israel's own words, a preemptive strike, but preemptive against what? Iran does not have a nuclear weapon. Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. Iran was not on the brink of acquiring a nuclear weapon. Iran had not enriched uranium to the point where it could build a nuclear weapon. Okay, so none of that had happened. There is no way to justify this as anything but an act of aggression that is purely illegal. It is the very definition of the kind of aggression that is forbidden by the United Nations Charter. There is simply no question about it. There was no imminent attack coming from Iran. Netanyahu went on TV yesterday and said, we have, we've crippled Iran's nuclear weapons program. They don't have one. They don't. U.S. intelligence has repeatedly confirmed this. They don't have one. Okay, Israel keeps saying it. There's no evidence. If they had one, where's the evidence? Israel in this attack, I think there's no question about it, showed that they've obviously been planning this for months. They have obviously penetrated Iran very deeply in terms of spies and intelligence gathering. They were able to target people in their beds, all the way over in Iran. They were able, to target things precisely. It was a very clear success, and it was not just an attack from the air. There were apparently agents who assassinated some of the figures who have been killed. If they had evidence of this Iranian nuclear program, they could present it. They do not. And that is why the U.S. intelligence assessment continues to be that Iran had not made the decision to pursue a nuclear weapon, let alone that they had one. There is no way to define and defend this as self-defense. The fact that Iran supports people and groups that Israel is fighting, like Hamas, like Hezbollah, that like Ansar Allah, all the different militias that they support, does not constitute an act of self-defense on the part of Israel in this kind of an attack. There is no way under international law that can be argued. And this needs to be made clear. This was as illegal an attack as you can get. And again, nobody's calling it what it is. It was an illegal attack. It was a pure act of aggression, every bit as wrong and as unacceptable as Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which incidentally, Russia defends in the very same way. By citing a potential threat from Ukraine that they have no evidence of. Same thing. So, here's where the Democrats These are key Democrats, certainly on this issue, and they are attacking Trump from the right. And anyone who thinks this is good politics for the Democrats is out of their damn minds. So aside from everything else, it's just another example of why Democrats, why something I said in the wake of that video of Senator Padilla being dragged out by police from Kristi Noem's press conference, that Democrats, that Republicans are fascists and Democrats are not the answer. And they're showing us this again. Somebody who's a little more, still very deeply wrong, but more balanced was Chris Coons, who said, I have long believed that the world cannot tolerate a nuclear-armed Iran and that Iran and its proxies pose a serious threat to American interests. I am deeply concerned by the IAEA Board of Governors' determination earlier today that Iran has failed to comply with the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Please do read my Mondo Weiss article because I talk a lot about that and why that happened and what that really is. And I think it's important stuff. The IAEA Board of Governors' determination earlier, this is Coons again, earlier today, that Iran has failed to comply with the Non-Proliferation Treaty and Iran's defiant subsequent declaration of a new underground enrichment facility, which is indeed what Iran did in response to the decision by the Board of Governors to censure Iran. The failure to comply with the NPT, I mean, is this a joke? Is this a joke? We say this in the context of Israel's attack. Israel is a clandestine nuclear power. Israel is not a signatory to the NPT, but they have developed nuclear weapons. Israel should be forbidden from having those nuclear weapons, and they have an arsenal of them. And Israel is the one that attacks other countries, not Iran. Iran is a lot of things. Iran, I have much negative feeling and views about the Iranian government. It is theocratic. It is authoritarian. It's a lot of very nasty things. But when it comes to this question, they're not the bad guys here. They don't attack other countries. Israel does. They don't have nuclear weapons that are unaccounted for. Israel does. They are not the danger. They are not the country to be afraid of having nuclear weapons. Israel is. And yet we're perfectly fine with a country that attacks other countries at will and with impunity having nuclear weapons. It's insanity. Back to Coons, and this is where he gets a little bit, I think, more reasonable. Even so, tonight's actions have the potential to lead to dangerous escalation and a full-scale regional war. I am following developments closely tonight and am urging restraint, whatever that means. It really isn't realistic to expect Iran not to respond, which I think is what he's saying. He's kind of telling Israel to back off too. I think he does want to see this back and forth apparently stop, but reasonably speaking, if Iran didn't respond, they'd be encouraging Israel to attack it at will. There have been some Democrats, though, I think, who made somewhat better statements, maybe not quite where I would like them to be. Chris Murphy, for example, said Israel's attack on Iran, clearly intended to scuttle the Trump administration's negotiations with Iran, risks a regional war that will likely be catastrophic for America and is further evidence of how little respect world powers, including our own allies, have for President Trump. This is a disaster of Trump and Netanyahu's own making, and now the region risks spiraling toward a new deadly conflict that may be good for Netanyahu's domestic politics, but it will likely be disastrous for both the security of Israel, the United States, and the rest of the region. He's right. He's absolutely right. Tim Kaine of Virginia he says he cannot understand why Israel would launch a preemptive strike at this juncture, knowing high-level diplomatic discussions between the United States and Iran are scheduled for this weekend. Let me tell you something, Senator. That's exactly why Israel would launch a preemptive strike at this juncture. Israel does not want to see diplomacy succeed. Let us be very clear about that. There is no agreement that could possibly be reached between Iran and the United States that Israel would be satisfied with. The reason for that is not because it's not possible to make sure that Iran doesn't get a nuclear weapon through diplomacy. In fact, as I pointed out, it's a lot more likely to ensure that Iran never has a nuclear weapon through diplomacy, because by attacking it, you give it every reason to pursue a nuclear weapon. And you can't bomb away knowledge. As long as they know how to do it, the more you incentivize them to do it, the more you're defeating your own purpose. And we've already seen diplomacy work, and we're watching military action fail. So that's why. That's why Israel would do this, because that's not the point. The point for Israel is not the nuclear issue. It never was. You can go back 10 years, 20 years, 30. It was never about nuclear weapons. That was always a cover for regime change. That's what this is. And I hope that the senator understands that, just, doesn't want to get into saying that in public, because then it opens up a whole can of worms of, how, and you can't really prove it. So, hopefully, and I think Kane's not, I think Kane's a pretty smart guy. I think he knows. He says these talks are the only viable and sustainable path to curtailing Iran's development of nuclear weapons and protecting U.S. national security interests in the region. Of course they are. Of course they are. And if that was really Donald Trump's concern, that's what he would have done. Look, I never thought that was why Donald Trump was pursuing it. I admit, I thought Donald Trump was more serious than he turned out to be, not because of that, but because I thought, he wants this Nobel Peace Prize, and that's probably the best way for him to get it, is to resolve this issue with Iran, is to basically do what Obama understood that he needed to do, and the field is right there. The Saudis, the Emiratis, the Arab states in the Gulf want to see a lowering of the temperature. They want to address many of their very significant issues with Iran through diplomacy. They want to tamp down the use of the various militias, because our allies use them too, including Israel for that matter. And these are the people who have Trump's ear. So I thought for those reasons, Trump might actually be serious. That unfortunately, it looks like he was not. There were others. Elizabeth Warren also spoke against this. Jean Shaheen, I think, had some good comments on this. She said, this is a dangerous moment for the region and the world. The Trump administration must move quickly to de-escalate the situation. And that's correct. Look, the point I made in my article, and I think it's the point here too, the way out of this is right in front of us. This is not the same as the political tangle that exists between Israel and Palestine. We can all say it's an obvious thing and easy to you stop Israel from committing genocide by cutting off the weapons. Well, the politics around that are very complicated. Politics around this are not. I mean, there's a very simple way. It was on the table. It was right there, and it looked like the Trump administration had it in the palm of their hand. Iran allows the inspections. They open themselves up. We lift sanctions. We drop this ridiculous poison pill of zero enrichment, and kabam, you have a deal, and it's done. And we say, Israel, you have to live with it. It's right there. It was there. It was in Trump's hand. Donnie, you want a Nobel Peace Prize? You're never going to deserve one. But if you want one, that's how you're going to get it, man. Okay? It's right here. And to see this all going on over something that doesn't exist. There is no Iran nuclear weapons program. There certainly hasn't been one since at least 2002, and there may not have even been one then. But we're talking about a quarter century ago. It doesn't exist. Okay, the stockpiling of higher enriched uranium that they've been doing is simply because they are suffering under sanctions, and they're trying to come up with something that they can say, look, we have this, we'll give it up if you lift the sanctions. They're simply trying for negotiating leverage. It's clear that, at least for the moment, Israel and the regime change hawks have the upper hand, and they have, for the moment again, the war that they have wanted for so many decades. Where it goes from here, if the world has any sense at all, there is a deal to be made that is not hard to make. These basic parameters that I've laid out, yeah, there'll be details that you work out, but they're not hard. It was once the basic framework is in place, once the basic contours of the agreement are there, how you work out the fine details, not difficult. It's weeks of work. It's done. So, um, again, diplomacy. We do have at least a few Democratic senators and members of Congress. There have been some others who've made good statements. Um, but we also have many others who have made terrible statements. And of course, Republicans down the line, with only one or two exceptions, who are basically talking out of isolationism and uh, uh, in some cases just general antipathy. Um, but Republicans are pretty unified behind the war effort. So, and they'll stay that way as long as it's only Israelis that are fighting. If Americans get involved, it may be a little bit more interesting. So it's worth calling your representatives and saying that you don't want to see this war continue, that you want to see the United States not only stay out of it, but also urge Israel to cut it out and to stop, and for this administration to pursue the deal that it had in the palm of its hand. It's worth them hearing from you that you want to that's what you want to see happen. And if you found this of value, if you think this sort of analysis and reporting is something that you want to see continue, please do support Cutting Through newsletter at mitchellplitnick.substack.com. Tell your friends, share the video, and hopefully the next time I'm speaking to you is with at least a little bit better news.